I had a nightmare about my mom. Thinking about that house.
These nightmares, that's something that's been going on through prison and again
Oh yeah. Nightmares I've had since my crime. It was my choice to commit this crime.
I keep reliving this one nightmare over and over again, and it's tied to that night. It's tied to the house. One is about that night, and I keep on going back into that house and just feeling very frightened. And, the murder just happens again and again and again in my mind. Like, I'm free physically, but I'm not free from the trauma.
It was my choice to commit this crime.
In honor of it being the spookiest season, Halloween, I feel like now would be a good time to talk about how Gypsy Rose Blanchard once claimed that she was visited by a demon while she was in prison. Perhaps Gypsy still is haunted by the effects of her choices, but not only that, Gypsy claimed to have a haunted house, her mother had powers, Gypsy herself dabbled in a little bit of the craft, so what a better time than right now. I know there's probably some of you guys that are going to be watching this that totally doesn't believe in anything ghost-related, demon, spiritual, whatever, but just for the sake of the spooky season, let's just discuss everything that was going on supernaturally with Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Because, perhaps had the whole Munchausen by proxy defense thing not worked out, Gypsy very well could have been blaming the devil for making her do what she did to her mother. But before we get into all of that, though, make sure you like and hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date with everything I've got coming out on my channel. Let's go ahead and get into the haunted history of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. I've also seen a lot of theories about Gypsy Rose Blanchard over the years, and one of them included Gypsy killing her mother as some sort of bizarre sacrifice, some sort of weird sacrificial ceremony. There are a couple of them that are out there, but, to be honest, it doesn't change the fact that Gypsy says her story involves witchcraft. Whether you believe in it or not, I don't know. I think that people have the ability to give power to things that otherwise may not have any in the first place. And we know that Gypsy Rose Blanchard struggled with nightmares. Even as a little child, she seemed to have an issue with recurring nightmares. And, maybe the house was haunted, or maybe she had something attached to her. But I want to get into what Gypsy has said about all of these weird manifestations that were going on, starting with Gypsy in her book talking about how a demon visited her while she was in prison after the murder and how it really, really scared her. Especially writing her book, she did not hold back, and it almost makes it unbelievable. So it really is. It's just really hard to believe that all of these things happened because they more than likely didn't. But, when it comes to her getting visited by a demon in prison, I wouldn't be surprised just because of who she is and what she did and what she had going on at the time. And we know that Gypsy was at least sort of getting into witchcraft or whatever, or at least seemed to be interested in it. She performed spells on Nicholas. She says that her mom performed spells on her, which I don't really believe that. But let's just start out and read what Gypsy Rose had to say about this unique encounter with some sort of, being or the nightmare that she had while she was in prison. She starts out by talking about how when she was younger, she and her mother went to churches. And at one point, she eventually kind of gravitated towards being a Wiccan, but while she was in prison, her book says, I had a nightmare that I was asleep, lying on my back in my bunk in the dark, and I felt something on my chest. I wake up to a dark figure tearing open my chest and eating my heart. When I woke up from the nightmare, I was in the same position I had been in the dream. I felt paralyzed and frightened with the lights off. When I closed my eyes, the scene from the nightmare reappeared in my awakened state. The demon was there. When I opened my eyes, it would disappear. The demon was there. Something inside was telling me, hey girl, you've got to stop wandering on your own. And after that, she spoke to Ryan, her then husband. The dream had her so spooked that a demon was literally tearing open her chest and eating her heart. Now I know that Gypsy has a little bit of a habit of telling stories. Some are very far-fetched, I'll admit, but, something about Gypsy having terrifying nightmares and being visited by demons and their house being haunted, maybe some things might be possible. You may not be somebody that believes in things like this, ghosts or demons or whatever, but even if you're not, it's still an interesting little bit of information. But that version was actually from her ebook, where she said that she started talking to Ryan about praying and getting back into church, due to this nightmare and struggling and feeling like something was really telling her that she needed to stop wandering around on her own and rely on a higher power. But in My Time to Stand, she switches it up. She still talks about the same dream with the same demonic figure, standing right there in front of her every time she would open her eyes. She says, the demon was there. When I'd open my eyes, it would disappear. Life at Chillicothe had its ups and downs, points of progress and points of regression. I had gotten clean while at county, progress. But then the roommate I had in 2018 was still in her addiction, and upon getting her fix of Suboxone, a medication ironically intended to treat opioid addiction, she shared it with me and I relapsed. Who knew you could get addicted to the drug that's supposed to lead you out of addiction? I began to abuse Suboxone, regression. And then strangely, she begins talking about being with a woman in this book for whatever reason. Throughout her book, she brings up having recurrent nightmares multiple times. So because of Gypsy's really weird, bizarre dream of this demonic entity standing over her and ripping out her chest or whatever she put in there, I decided to go look it up and see what this could possibly mean, because I don't know if you're one of those people that believe that maybe dreams can sometimes have some interpretation or not, but this is what it says. A dream about ripping open a chest and eating a heart is a powerful and disturbing image that points to profound emotional distress, vulnerability, and transformation. The precise meaning depends on the context of the dream, who was eating the heart, and how you felt. So the key symbols in the dream are the chest, which represents your emotional core, innermost feelings, and the boundaries that protect you. The heart is the symbolic center of your emotions, love, and vulnerability in spirit. A heart in a dream is not the physical organ, but the emotional and spiritual core of your being. Ripping open your chest or tearing at your chest symbolizes a profound sense of emotional violation, pain, or distress. It can feel like your most vulnerable emotions have been exposed or forcefully accessed. Eating the heart is a form of dream cannibalism, which often symbolizes the metaphorical devouring or internalizing of a significant emotional experience. So it can be interpreted in various ways, one of which is healing from heartbreak by symbolically dissecting your heart, your subconscious, maybe trying to understand and process a past trauma or heartbreak, or a spiritual, emotional rebirth. Some interpretations suggest that this is a dismemberment dream that can be a metaphor for being taken apart emotionally and spiritually and then reassembled stronger. Or, I feel like this maybe has more to do with it, where it says, if you are the one that's eating the heart in the dream, which it probably was her, but it was a demon, so I don't know. It says, feeling guilt or regret. The dream may indicate underlying guilt or hang-ups about a situation where you feel you overstepped boundaries or hurt someone, a desire for control. The dream can symbolize a struggle for control, either over yourself or a difficult situation. Taking the heart suggests taking on the emotional essence of a matter. And it says the demon can represent an addiction, a negative habit, or an unhealthy personality trait, such as anger or insecurity that you're battling. The demon may be an external manifestation of a deep-seated fear or trauma that are festering in your unconscious mind. In some spiritual traditions, a demon may represent a feeling of being under spiritual attack or sensing a malevolent presence influencing your life. I mean, honestly, it's all pretty weird. But personally, I feel like, I talk sometimes about like spirituality or like my beliefs, but I feel like it's an easy thing to blame things on the devil when you're doing your own actions. It's like a cop-out, honestly, but I feel like ultimately, like, your own decisions are your own, and you can blame something else for trying to influence you, but ultimately, those decisions are your own. Nothing's forcing you to do it. It's yourself. You're the one that's doing this, and Gypsy is the one that did this to her mother, and although she wants to try to play it off like she's the innocent victim and everything, I don't think when she lays her head down at night that's going to be the case, because, the mind has a way of bringing up things that you really want to forget. Gypsy says that I thought about my mother a lot, reflecting on the few happy memories from my early childhood. Outside in my prison playground, I'd remember Frosty the Mardi Gras snowman and the arts and crafts we'd do. I'd still have frequent nightmares. One recurring nightmare I began to have was of me falling asleep lying on my back in my bunk in the dark. One of the reasons, apparently, why Gypsy Rose decided to go a different direction is because she felt that God never answered any of her prayers whenever she would be praying to him. As much as she thought about ending her life, she had the chance at County to be baptized for the 7th time in her life. Her mother experimented with different churches and Christian denominations, so we were baptized a lot. Each time felt like a hopeful renewal and cleansing, so I didn't mind the redundancy. But after the whole thing went down with Dan, I'd become angry at God for leaving me with her, for not showing me the way out. I'd asked God in church and before bed and in my head over and over. Nothing ever changed. I prayed to him at doctor's appointments, before procedures, when Mama put a spell on me. 2 weeks before the murder, I prayed to him again. Please don't let her make me get that surgery. Don't let them take my voice. No one ever came. With each prayer, things only seemed to get worse, so I gave up on God. At County, after hearing about my mother's cremation, my soul turned to ash. I felt so dirty, so unclean. I craved holy water to absorb into my skin and absolve me from my sin. In another moment when she mentions having nightmares, it says, holy water was just a stopgap. After I learned about my mother's cremation, I began to have nightmares as my subconscious processed what had actually happened. One recurring dream was Mike, my dad, Christy, and I rummaging through Mama's hoarding in order to clean out the house. Mike finds Mama's baby pillow in a pillow in a pillow and hands it to me, dripping with her blood. The nightmares consumed me. I wished for Oxy to take it away. During the day, I was living in a detached dream state. I cried at night, often telling other inmates, I miss my mom. Some would suck their teeth or act baffled, but most of them gave me a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on, until that one inmate snitched on me to her lawyer. I remember thinking, this is what having a friend must be like. In that way, I preferred jail to the isolation I felt on Volunteer Way. I needed something bigger than myself to call upon. And so, for the first time in a very long time, I made praying a part of my daily life. My prayer sounded more like a desperate begging. Please, God, please help me. I'm so scared, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what is happening. Why is this happening? Please, God, I'm so sorry. Please send me a blessing. She says that she still has nightmares. Nothing is regular again after the whole time. I still have nightmares about going into the hole. In one dream, they put me in the hole for being a Wiccan. In another, male guards put me in the hole for not stripping for them on demand. In another one, I'm in a cell in the hole, and Ryan is in an adjacent cell, and he whispers, and we whisper to each other through the vents. In Gypsy's medical records, it's also noted that when she was a child, she also had recurring nightmares. At an appointment whenever they were going over her CPAP, it stated in the medical records by Dee Dee that Gypsy would often wake up in the middle of the night screaming. And now, with newer information coming out, we also know that towards the end of Dee Dee's life, she had this overwhelming feeling that her house was haunted. Perhaps that could explain why there were so many crosses throughout the house, why they had a picture of the Pope hanging up, Because, I mean, there were crosses pretty much in every single room. There was a picture of Jesus in the bedroom, a cross above the bed. There were a lot of really strong Christian symbols all throughout the home. Maybe Dee Dee was hanging those up as a way to protect her. But, of course, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if we are to believe that Dee Dee really was into this dark energy or magic, like Gypsy likes to say. She kind of goes back and forth between magic and spellcasting and voodoo. But, who knows? I don't know that I necessarily believe that. We all know that she did have like a strange little tattoo of a wizard that did have like a pentagram on it. So I don't know when she actually got that, and the family always said that Dee Dee was a very dark person, that Dee Dee was into a lot of dark arts, and Rod said she had a pet tarantula, so she must be evil, right? Because she had a pet spider. But toward the end of Dee Dee's life, she was thinking that her house was haunted. There were some strange things going on. But in Gypsy's book, she says that she believed her mother had magic powers because weird occurrences happened in their home all of the time. Or perhaps Dee Dee liked to hang up all those things to make Gypsy feel bad for her decisions, because according to Gypsy and her book as well, whenever Gypsy ran away to go sneak off to be with Dan and was eventually brought back to the home, she says that her mother forced her to look into the mirror on Good Friday, which I've only heard you shouldn't do that if you're like saying Bloody Mary or something, but she says, I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, something Mama told me I should never do on Good Friday. You will see Jesus dying on the cross if you look at yourself. Avoid the mirror on Good Friday, she used to say. She printed a picture of Dan from his Facebook page and then smashed my laptop and my track phone. She took a mason jar and shoved a picture of me and the picture of Dan into it with a cow's tongue. The tongue was to represent silencing me. She dropped a piece of toilet paper that had some of my period blood in the jar and buried it in the backyard, not far from the shed. I observed her bizarre behavior like an outsider, detached and confused. She chanted over me something like, by God, Gypsy Rose will never find true love. Gypsy Rose will never find happiness. All I heard was, Gypsy will never be free. Her spell came true. Because the next thing I knew, she made me go back into the house, handcuffed me to a dog leash, and connected the leash to her. Please, I'm sorry, I'll be good, Mama, was my refrain. She placed bells on the doors and reinforced the black garbage bags taped to every window in the house. I was trapped. If she fell asleep, I couldn't move without waking her up. I was at her mercy for everything, to go to the bathroom, for food, for everything. As punishment, she would not feed me every day. Just a little bit of broth every other day. I would frequently get hunger pains. She kept a knife by her bedside table, which she said was for protection if I attempted to run away or do anything to leave. Later on, when Gypsy is talking about how she was forced to sleep out in the shed that she completely didn't remember, apparently, she speaks about how she also still has nightmares about that moment and how she felt that when she was cursed with that mason jar, that the spell still held power over her. We've heard her talk about it quite a bit. And in the book, she says, my stomach turns over when I play the moment back in my mind. I look back at that little girl whose mind had been bent by a lifetime of indoctrination and see she wouldn't have fought back. Or maybe I was just too close to the cursed mason jar, where the spell still had power. Gypsy will never be happy and she will never be free. Gypsy says in the book, if I was found out, I would be in big trouble, not just for the laptop use, but for the impure thoughts. Punishments ranged from the physical to emotional to the supernatural. I remember a trip to the store when my mother marched in and handpicked the right raw cow's tongue. She needed it for a recipe, but not the kind from a Barefoot Contessa cookbook, as my mother didn't eat meat. She was cooking up a spell. Whenever I would compare our normal to how other people lived, my mother dissuaded my protests by reminding me that she and my grandmother had certain powers. Sometimes I still believe it, especially the part that I'll never be free. It's really easy to be brought back into that line of thinking when you think your mother will go out back and mix a potion in a cauldron to punish you forever. Maybe she had watched Snow White too many times, with the mother casting her fair daughter out to the hunter's delight, jealous of her coming of age. If I ever questioned our lifestyle, the gas reimbursements, why she kept telling doctors I wasn't old enough to have a period, why she would tell a lie to a friend, or why I couldn't have friends my age, my mother reminded me of her witchcraft powers. A pencil would fall off the table and she'd say she did it with her mind. The shower head would drip water and she'd claim it was the force of her energy. The little house on Volunteer Way could swallow me up whole if my mother just willed it to. So my mother was not only my sole caretaker without whom I could die for any reason at any time, she was like a god to me, with omniscient powers. If I wanted to sleep alone once in a while, she would say, with indifference, "I hope nothing happens to you tonight," and then close the bedroom door. I became afraid of the dark real quick. Of course, this would result in my begging to sleep with her, waiting for her to have mercy on me. "You are my heart," she'd say while we snuggled away with the adrenaline rush I felt from being alone in the dark. And of course, we know Gypsy's alternate personalities that she decided to choose included one named Demona, obviously demon, Demona. Totally makes sense. We know that Gypsy was also convincing Nicholas Godejohn that she was performing some sort of ritual or binding ceremony that she completed when she asked Nicholas Godejohn for a lock of his hair in order to complete this ritual to bring them closer. According to court transcripts, the professional is speaking about Nicholas, and it said that he indicated to me that they had performed, or rather she had performed, a binding spell through Wicca. They had actually considered themselves to be married. And he was extremely close to her, and he felt terribly about her situation. He thought that she was being abused, she was being held captive, and there was no escape from the situation. And what did he feel like he could do about that? Well, she enlisted his help, and this was something that had been discussed for a period of time. What's interesting about the whole voodoo thing that she said her mother had going on was, in all of the documentaries and interviews, she always said that it was a way to break her and Dan up, and the only time that she mentions anything about being silenced is whenever she's writing it in her book. Now, of course, this could have been the co-authors that were writing alongside Gypsy, and they added it because it didn't really make a whole lot of sense as to why Dee Dee would need these specific ingredients for this spell. Because if you go into, the interweb and start looking up what these ingredients could do, it doesn't show anything about breaking up a love or never finding love or happiness, but it is a way for somebody to keep their mouth shut. Type in the, I don't know if you'd call them ingredients for the spell that Dee Dee allegedly cooked up. It says that this ritual contains very specific steps, and the core components and symbolic actions are consistent across many versions of the spell, whether that be through hoodoo, brujeria, whatever. Typically, the purpose of this is to stop someone from gossiping, lying, or speaking badly about the practitioner. The tongue symbolizes the person's ability to speak, which is bound or controlled through the magical process. While specific steps can vary, the core components are consistent. It says the cow's tongue is representative. This is the central ingredient representing the tongue of the person being targeted. The jar is the container that holds the tongue and the other ingredients symbolically sealing and containing the target's speech. Blood is a tag lock. Often a few drops of the practitioner's blood is added to the jar to create a magical link between the spellcaster and the intended effect. Other ingredients may include paper with the target's name, spices, and rusted items. So we know that Gypsy Rose Blanchard really actually convinced Nicholas Godejohn that she was doing witchcraft, or that she at least had some sort of ability to do it. And he did send a lock of his hair to Gypsy in order to perform this spell. He apparently assumed it meant that they would be married in some sort of, I don't know if it's spiritual or magical sense. But, what's funny about it, if you look it up and figure out what these, spells are actually used for, it says that a binding spell using a lock of hair is a ritual that aims to create a powerful connection between two people, intended to make a bond, influence their actions, or control their will. The hair is used because it is believed to carry a person's physical essence and DNA, providing a direct link to their energy. The spell typically involves braiding or tying together a lock of hair from each person with a cord or string while focusing on the desired intention. Typically, this spell can be used to strengthen a relationship between two people, such as in a love spell, but it also is used for influencing the actions, or it's to influence the other person's behavior or actions. In other contexts, hair has been used in rituals to restrict a person's actions, control their will, or even inflict bad luck by burying a jar containing the hair with the other objects on their property. But I want to know what you guys think about this. Do you think Gypsy was actually getting into some pretty dark, twisted things? Do you think Gypsy was actually getting a little bit too deep into the spell casting and witchcraft or whatever it was that she was messing with? Do you believe that Dee Dee ever actually was? Or do you think that Gypsy just said all of that for the sake of the plot? We know Gypsy has a little bit of a tendency to embellish a lot of things. But one thing's for sure, Nicholas Godejohn has always believed that Gypsy put a spell on him, that they were essentially eternally bound together. Now, did Gypsy use that for actual true love, or did she use it as another way to somehow control or bend Nick's will? Do you guys even believe in any of this stuff? Do you believe that it played any role in what Gypsy eventually did, or do you just believe that Gypsy will forever eternally have to deal with the consequences of her actions, and that she is having these recurrent nightmares solely based on those actions and those consequences? I want to know your thoughts on it all, so drop them down below in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button. Please share or hype this video if you want to support me and my channel. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye!